This is Chris with This Day in Metal, and today we have the honor of having Mr. Marc Ferrari on our show. Thank you, Marc, for coming on.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, no, it's we keep getting better and better interviews, so it's really cool, man. I appreciate it. And what a career! We were mentioning right before we started the show that Keel 40 years is coming up, huh?
Yeah, hard to believe. You live long enough, you get to celebrate these kind of anniversaries. But yeah, I moved to Los Angeles in January of '84. I met Ron about 6 weeks later, maybe 8 weeks later, and the first Keel show was in April of '84. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, Perkins Palace in Pasadena. Yeah.
Heck
So
yeah. So before that, I was going to go back. So I was going on your website and I was checking out your career and just going through all the stuff that you've done. And it's remarkable, man, your career. It's a cool, just the journey of it, I guess, is really cool. And just talk about being at the right place at the right time and, and just the stars aligning and everything. It just worked out for you. But I was curious. So Steel Assassin is where you kind of started your musical, or actually I take that back. Southbound, that was the one thing I did notice. Southbound, I thought that was super cool, man.
that was my high school band, yeah. And as the name implies, we definitely had our focus on bands like Skinnerd and Molly Hatchet and REO Speedwagon, which maybe not Southern, but REO Speedwagon. We did a lot of Nugent, stuff like party music, but definitely a lot of Skinner.
Heck yeah, no, it's a good way to cut your teeth and doing covers and just learn how to perform and just getting into it and having fun, if anything else.
I learned how to lug amplifiers upstairs, and
Yeah, those are the fun days.
Yeah.
I noticed and in the picture too, you have the sign on the van. Was that the band's van as well too?
That was our drummer's van, and like all the gear went in there, and what other band members could fit in after the gear was there. Yeah, and I actually slept in that van a couple of times. Crazy gigs we used to play. Sleeping under stages or sleeping in the van. That's what you do, man. I was 16, 17 years old. Cutting my teeth on being a performing musician at that time.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And so were any of those guys in that band part of Steel Assassin when you moved on to
No,
Massachusetts or
no. So I moved to Boston slightly before a month before my 19th birthday. I was still 18 when I left Western New York to move to Boston to join this band, Steel Assassin.
Oh, okay.
And the story there is I had met those guys at a tailgate party at a Judas Priest concert in Rochester the summer of my 18th year. Because that's what you used to do back then, man. You used to go to shows early and have tailgate parties. And I happened to be partying next to these guys that were following Judas Priest around. They were, the nucleus of this band, Steel Assassin. And, they said they were looking for a guitar player, and I was looking for a way out. So it was a good match.
Heck yeah.
Steel Assassin did a couple of demos, and I know we actually got a little love from some of the fanzines back then. This was 81, 81, and maybe we did another set of demos in 82. And I'll tell you a little funny story. Kerrang! Magazine was the big magazine back then. It was you had to get on an import. So like every 2 weeks or whatever it was, maybe it's once a month, every 2 weeks, forget. Used to go to the record store hoping they had the new issue of Kerrang! And I think they gave us a little love, and I became pen pals with Lars Ulrich. This is a true story. He'll confirm it if you ever talk to him. That my picture, I sent him my picture, and they published it, and I got all these, pen pals from England, and he was one. So we exchanged a few letters back in the day.
That's super cool. Way back before the internet, before email, before social media.
Oh yeah,
man, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, and it just shows the community of music and heavy metal, especially, just shows how tight it is, man. That's really cool.
So yeah, Steel Assassin, unfortunately, was pretty short-lived. It was over by the summer of '82, the end of '82. And then I had a cover band in Boston. I started the first Aerosmith tribute band back in 1980, late '82, '83.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I did for the next year or change. And then I moved out to Los Angeles in early '84.
So did you move out to LA with anybody else, or you said I'm going for it and you just went and did it?
That's another story, and I've told it a few times. But actually, a couple of the guys in my cover band had come out uh, in like the fall of '83, and came back ranting and raving about how great the weather was. The music scene was starting to pop in '83, and the girls, and the Olympics were coming in '84. There was just a lot of energy,
Yeah,
and so we decided, if we're going to be starving, we might as well be starving where the girls are. We might as well be starving where the weather was. We might as well be starving where the music scene was, were
yeah.
happening. So those guys moved out ahead of me a couple of months, and I think they moved out around Thanksgiving time of '83. I moved out a couple months later, and I sold my return ticket. Back then, you could like sell your return portion of a round trip ticket. You can't do that anymore, but because I knew I wasn't coming back. But about a month or two later, the three guys all got tired. All got tired of it, ran out of money or missing their mommies or whatever. I don't know, but they decided to move back, and I wasn't going back. And I stuck it out. And
Yeah.
I got introduced to Ron through Mike Varney sometime in March of '84, and some of the story from there.
Yeah, and so I noticed you were what was it with Mike Varney too? You were another pen pal, right? That's how you met him, was through Guitar
Yeah.
X, correct?
Well, yeah, I've been reading Guitar Player magazine forever. Since I was a teenager, and he had that column that he was spotlighting, three or four guys a month, and I submitted for it. I never got in there, but I did get his attention, and we were quote unquote pen pals. And another funny story, I know I've told this before, that for Christmas of '83, which was like the month before I moved out here, he sent me a little present, and he sent me a couple albums on Shrapnel, and one of them was the Steeler album.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of interesting here, 3 months later, I'm in Keel. So it's just kind of an interesting coincidence. But yeah, Mike made that connection. Mike gave me Ron's number, and Ron says I called him 17 times. I don't remember that. He was just joking. But I think I was a little persistent in making sure he got my message.
Yeah, yeah. But smart, got to. That's I mean,
Well, you can't wait around for the phone to ring. You got to make it right.
oh heck yeah. So you met Ron. So had begun starting Keel at that point, or is it just
Well,
kind of an idea or a thought?
he was still in Steeler. Steeler was a revolving door of musicians.
Yeah.
And he had already, after Ingve left, he'd gone through a couple of guitar players. He'd gone through Mitch Perry, and he had Kurt James was the guitarist that was in the last lineup of Steeler. And I think Steeler had been passed by all the labels multiple times, and it was it's just like Ron thought, and rightly so, that I got to do something fresh. I got to reboot, and so he disbanded Keeler, disbanded
Good
Keeler,
name though.
and formed the band Keel, and it was a fresh start. And I'm a much different player than Mitch and Ingve and Kurt. I'm not the classic LA shredder kind of guy. I'm definitely more of a blues based guitar player. My roots are guys like Pat Travers and Joe Perry and Johnny Winter and Robin Trower and Joe Perry, Ace Frehley. The list goes on and on. And Skinner, Nugent. These are mostly blues based rock guitar players.
Yeah. Well, melody and melodic rock, it's cool. It's definitely, it has its place.
Yeah, I'll throw Michael Schenker in there too, because he was one of my greatest influences. But yeah, I definitely, I'm not, I'm not of the same mold of the classic LA shredders, for better or worse.
So I had one. So when I was going through your career, I had a quick question. I was just curious. So when who came up with the name Keel? Whose idea was that? And then was that difficult for the other musicians, or was that an easy thing?
No, it was all Ron. It was all Ron, and Dokken was out there.
Gotcha.
Dio was out there. I don't think Slaughter was out there yet. Slaughter was a couple years later. And Winger a few years after us. But no, I think it was the right move to make, and I was totally comfortable with it. You know, Ron's a good leader. You know, a team needs a leader. Football team needs a you know, quarterback, and I was content with being the being on the team. You know,
Gotcha.
yeah.
And nothing wrong
So
with that. And I mean, that's what makes a band work too, is I mean, you can't, I mean, everybody wants to be the leader. It's just impossible and just never works out. So yeah. And
so
everybody,
yeah,
well, and
you know,
everybody kind of fits their space, and that really is what creates the sound and really creates the music.
well, I think in Keel, you know, we were a great combination of the players in the band. Brian, the other guitar player, Brian J. He is a classic LA shredder. I'll put him up there with all the greats that I just mentioned. What he's right up there with the Randy Rhodes and the Jakey Lees and the Warren DeMartinis, and Brian gets overlooked a lot. He's he doesn't get the credit he deserves.
Yeah, well, and much like Keel itself, you guys definitely never got, the full recognition you guys truly deserved.
It's interesting because a lot of people don't remember this, but Keel actually won Best New Band in Circus Magazine, and we beat out Bon Jovi and Iron Maiden that year. I mean, that's true. Look it up. And we were Best New Band in Metal Edge that same year and Rock Scene. So like 3 out of the top 4 or 5, uh, publications at the time. And
Yeah.
I mean, last time that Keel ever had its name over Bon Jovi or Iron Maiden, but it's true. And we had a great fan base, and obviously that song "The Right to Rock" resonated a lot with people. And we didn't have the same trajectory as some of our colleagues, and we could be armchair quarterbacks and uh, blame this and blame that. It was a combination of a lot of things, and I'm not bitter about it.
Yeah.
We had a good shot at it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's awesome. It's a great song and just the timing. So the other thing I was curious too is just so Keel started in '84. So from '84, when did The Right to Rock come out? It was about a year later.
Well, yeah, but The Right to Rock was actually recorded in August of '84. That's when we recorded Lay Down the Law in June of '84, and 8 weeks later, we're back in the studio with Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of time to write. So we had on that album we had three new songs: Back to the City, Electric Love, Right to Rock. We redid 3 songs, and then we cut 3 of Gene's songs. Because he had this narrow window that we had to get in the studio, and we couldn't wait around. So that seemed like okay. That seemed like the best option at the time for us to make another record. Literally, 2 months after we finished one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I was curious seeing the timeline from between
yeah,
Shrapnel Records to
the
that one.
album, The Right to Rock, was released in January of '85, but it was recorded in August of '84.
Gotcha. And so when it was released, how far from release time did the single or the video take off and the single for Right to Rock take off?
Immediate. I remember it being pretty immediate. I mean, we're
Wow.
rolling back the clock here at 38 and a half years or more.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, back then you had your video ready to go, and
Well, the
interesting.
other thing that you had that was huge was MTV and the video. I remember the video, just every single Headbangers Ball, every single
Yeah.
weekend you saw Right to
Yeah,
Rock.
unfortunately, we only did one video from that album. I couldn't tell you why we didn't release. We actually did, we actually released the single for Easier Said Than Done. It was released as a single, but we never did a video for it. So, we were signed to a production company called Gold Mountain. We weren't signed directly to A&M. And that had something to do with it. I'm sure, their budget wasn't the same as A&M's. So we probably should have done another video.
Well, and you figure at that point, people had no idea how big videos were going to be, or how big MTV would be, or how critical MTV would be, moving forward in that genre.
Well, that's the point too. But the Right to Rock, I look back at it now, it's such a snapshot of, what rock, hard rock was at the time, and what the look was, what the vibe was, and the attitude was.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, it was cool. It was good stuff. And definitely good memories, if anything else, you know. So,
Absolutely.
so definitely. So, with Gene Simmons being part of the band and producing and that kind of thing, do you think that did wonders for the band, or did it hinder the band, or how did that in your guys'
I've
opinion?
always said it did nothing but help. I mean, come on, came from one of the biggest bands in the world, and I know he made phone calls on our behalf, um, and just the cachet of us working with him helped certainly in the press. You know, as a producer, he was fine. Look, he did what a producer should do. Help with song arrangements, uh, get best performances out of a band, out of the band, suggest things. Be a referee sometimes. Sometimes band. I don't have to tell you, being in a band is like being married to four other guys. You're going to squabble about things. It's just natural.
Yeah.
So he was fine in that role. So I have, we used to call him Uncle Gene.
So then it sounds like he was pretty hands-on and very involved in the band and creating and helping really develop the band.
Especially on the Right to Rock. On the second album we did with him, The Final Frontier, we had more of a free reign. The Final Frontier is a much more varied album than Right to Rock. There's a ballad on there. There's a
Yeah.
classical guitar piece on there. There's a couple of poppier songs on there. The Right to Rock was really kind of straightforward, nose to the grindstone hard rock. You
Gotcha.
know,
And so obviously the studio and just the difference between Right to Rock and the Final Frontier, I'm sure the process was much different as well.
well, there were similarities, but again, with the Final Frontier, I just remember, there'd be times Gene would be on the phone for a couple hours. Do your parts. I'll come in and listen to it. He didn't have to handhold us quite as much.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was on the Final Frontier. He was working with this engineer, Dave Whitman, that was very. I think Dave worked with Hendrix. Did a lot of work there at Electric Lady, and so he trusted Dave to get the sounds down right.
Yeah.
But look, Gene is a big part of our story, and I'm hoping to see him early November at supposedly the last
We shall see.
gig in Los Angeles. Yeah.
But that's cool. So that's cool. So then, so by time Final Frontier comes around, you guys are full-fledged rock stars and, really probably living the dream. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche to say, but really, I'm sure at that point
Well,
life was grand.
yeah, 86 was that was our crowning year. We went to Europe, Sport a Deal that year. We did the Texas Jam opening for Van Halen. We opened up for Aerosmith at Sullivan Stadium. For me, being in an Aerosmith tribute band 3 years prior to that, and then opening up for Aerosmith was like, come on, what's wrong with this picture? 86, we did Hands Across America event. 86, we went to Japan. 86 was the year things, we weren't from being kind of, on most people's radars to like everybody's radars.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we did the most amount of touring that year. We did 2 videos, one for Because the Night, one for Tears of Fire. So it was a natural progression for us.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say at that point, 86 was the heyday and like the good times for especially that genre of music. And were you living in LA at the time, obviously?
I only lived in LA. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you lived the Sunset Strip and the Rainbow and all that kind of
Of
fun stuff.
course.
Yeah.
I closed the Rainbow many a night.
Heck yeah.
Well, when I first moved to LA, I lived walking distance from the Rainbow, stumbling distance, I used to like to say.
Yeah.
And then I moved not that far away. I moved to off Melrose, and but when I first moved to LA, I was right there in the thick of it.
Gotcha. So by the time you had moved there, had Quiet Riot already been signed and put out their album yet, or not yet?
Well, yeah, and don't forget, 83 was the year that things really started to take off. Quiet Riot had their #1 album. You know, they were they did the US Festival that year. Dokken, Rat, Motley Crue, Great White, all of these guys had indie releases. You know, and that was I had all those albums. You know, and
Yeah.
that was the other deciding factor for me to, you know, uproot from Boston and move to LA. I just kind of knew things were starting to turn there. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, the Quiet Riot album came out in '83, and
Okay.
they kind of busted the doors open. You know, even Van Halen was out prior to, you know, Quiet Riot, but they didn't have a #1 album till after Quiet Riot.
Gotcha. So Keel, did you guys play the Strip and play some of those clubs?
Of course.
Gotcha. Which was your favorite to play of all of them?
Well, the Country Club was kind of our stomping grounds. I think we played there the most in '84. I think we played there 3 or 4 times. Um, our second show was at the Roxy. Our second show was our first with Brian, and one of the opening acts that night was Kelly Rhodes, which was Randy's brother,
Oh
opening
wow.
for us. Yeah. I remember we played two nights at the Troubadour. You know, so yeah, we played the Strip,
Yeah.
at the Country Club, and I think we played a few other places a little further east. You know, again, we're rolling back a long time.
Oh yeah, I got you. No, it's interesting, and especially being a fan of music and all that kind of genre, it's just really cool to hear the stories and that kind of thing. So Keel, how long was Keel band, or what was the timeline for Keel back in the day? Up to '98, correct? Right?
No, we I left in '88.
Okay.
So after our fourth album, which was our third major, you know, don't forget the right Lay Down the Law was an indie release. It came out before The Right to Rock, then The Right to Rock in '85, Final Frontier in '86, and then the Keel album in '87. And we did 2 videos for that album. We did a video for Somebody's Waiting, and then we also had a song on Penelope Spheres' movie Dudes. We had a
Yep.
lead off track on that album. We did a video for that for Rock and Roll Outlaw.
Good
And
song. Great song.
yeah, that was a Rose Tattoo song. And that's how I got the gig in Waynesville, was through Penelope Spheres.
Nice. Well, even funnier, you mentioned Dudes. It's cool you mentioned. I totally forgot about that. But where they actually filmed the movie was Cottonwood, Arizona, where I grew up. And when I was a kid, I think it was 6th grade is when they were there filming the movie. John Cryer and all the guys there, and had the whole town shut down and everything. So it was
Yeah,
cool when it finally came out and Keel had the song. So we were like, even better, man. That's really cool.
yeah. So yeah, but after '87, and you know, Ron wanted to go a more commercial direction. We brought in a keyboard player. I wasn't vibing it. I left the band in early '88, and you know, had somewhat of a semi-difficult journey through the whole Cold Sweat process, getting that album out. But the Cold Sweat album came out finally in June of '90, excuse me, and we toured. We toured a fair amount on that album. We also toured with Dio. So I toured with Dio twice, once with Keel, once with Cold Sweat, and that was, you know, late 1990 was kind of when musical tastes were starting to shift, and you know,
Yeah.
grunge movement was in full blast in '91 when the Nirvana album came out, and guys like us all of a sudden, you know, were, you know, dinosaurs.
Yeah. So, but no, and which and the reason why I wanted to mention it, bring it up, is obviously Cold Sweat was a great band and it was a good time in your life. But it was interesting because then when I was going through your history, is I started reading about the Master Source music catalog, kind of brought you into that realm, and it just when I started reading more about it, I was like, wow, that is just like super interesting. Number one, and just how ironic and just how crazy just opportunity is.
Well, it goes back to that old saying: when one door closes, another one opens. You know, and the door closing was the grunge movement putting guys like me out of work, right? And so what it did was it forced me to forced me to kind of look at myself and what am I going to do here? You know, in that environment, it was going to be really tough to get another major label deal. And you know, I did start another band called Medicine Wheel, which did 3 independent releases, but you know, didn't quite have the same cachet as Keel or Cold Sweat. But anyways, around that period of time, I started getting songs of mine, demos used in films and TV shows. I had friends that were working on these shows, and you know, they'd say, "Hey, give me." The director is asking me to find them a rock song for this bar scene. You know, and that's how it started for me, very kind of innocently, and it blossomed into a monster. You know,
Yeah.
I hit on something at the right time, because back then, in the early '90s, there wasn't really a music library that had songs. There were music libraries out there that had, you know, generic sounding stuff that, you know, was done on, you know, Casio keyboards and drum machines. But if, you know, you were looking for a really good rock song, you had to license it, you know, from the publisher and the record company. It was slow and expensive. So it was like, you know what, you're never going to get that Van Halen song or that AC/DC song or whatever it is, but I can create one for you that sounds generically similar to them. I'm ripping them off, but just
Yeah.
something that sounds in the same ballpark. And that was my idea, and it took off like a rocket. And that's what I did for the better part of 15 years. Let's see, 92. Yeah, well, actually more, because I'm still doing it. But I developed that business and I sold it to Universal in 2007.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. And so I'm sure it was just like something where you just started off just, you know, doing the music and then boom, turned into a complete monster, like you said. So obviously it grew into something bigger than you ever expected or even thought.
I had 4 employees at one point. You know?
Oh wow. Wow. And so your catalog, so all the music was created by you, or were you having other artists?
Well, I was the project coordinator. You know, I would not be in the studio, uh, you know, most of the time. My time was more valuable being spent, you know, meeting clients or drumming up more business. You know,
Yeah.
I would hire people to, you know, hire my friends or hire, you know, composers to write this material for me.
Wow, that is very cool, man. Just talk about opportunity. So you're still doing it or still involved?
I well, after I sold Master Source to Universal, I stayed on for 5 years to run it for them.
Oh,
So I
okay.
was Universal Music Group employee for 5 years, and back in 2012, I stepped down from being a full-time employee. So here we are, 11 years later. Um, but I'm still producing music for that library, but I'm not employed by them.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I'm an
cool.
independent contractor to them.
Heck yeah, man. Talk about a career. Definitely.
I've been big boy, you know, and you know, you might know, you know, I was in Wayne's World, and of course my association with Pantera. A lot of people, you know, asked me about that, you know, because I was the first guy to start waving their flag back in 1985. You know,
Okay.
uh,
Well, it's just cool. Well, it's amazing to see when talent and you know and just the right times come together and have that right trajectory. Just what can happen. So you know, kudos to you, because man, I'm sure you worked very hard and earned every single bit of the accolades.
and continue to work hard at it. You know,
Heck yeah.
these days, you know, both Keel and Cold Sweat will play sporadically. You know, we've been on the Monsters of Rock cruise a couple times. Well, Keel's been on it 5 times, and Cold Sweat
Okay.
once. And Cold Sweat did the Monsters on the Mountain festival last year. So, you know, we you know, it averages maybe 1 gig a year or 2 gigs a year now.
Yeah.
Kind of is what it is, you know. There's only X amount of opportunities for uh, bands like us to be out there, and you know, obviously there are bands that have a higher profile than us that, you know, that we compete with in the marketplace. So
Yeah.
I'm content to play when we do play. You know, I have enough on my plate these days to keep me busy. I miss playing. I wish we played more, but again, I have to accept the fact that it kind of is what it is.
Yeah. Well, never know with the anniversary coming up. Well, we may see some more Keel, man.
We hope we have we're very hopeful. Let's put it that way.
Right on, man. I know we are hopeful as fans. So, well, hey, I'll let you get going, Mark. I absolutely appreciate your time. Love chatting with you. Awesome career, awesome guy, and just I appreciate everything you do, and obviously appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you. Your viewers can head on over to marcferrari.com, and everything's there.
Heck
All
yeah.
revealed, as Robert Plant used to say.
Heck yeah. All right, brother. Well, I thank you very, very much, and you have a wonderful night.
All right.
Take
Over
care.
now.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.
All right.